Did you know your gut health is directly linked to your immune system, and fermented foods are great for your gut? Today I'm going to show you exactly how to make an easy sauerkraut recipe. So it's the middle of fall and we've had our first frost, and as I was walking through the garden I noticed one of our red cabbage calling my name. It was time to make sauerkraut again. Cabbage is best picked after the frost because it's sweeter. So today I'm going to show you exactly how to use a cabbage to make sauerkraut. Sauerkraut is one of the most traditional fermented foods. It's gone back thousands of years, and you can make it with several different tools and several different methods. Today is going to be the salt packing method that I show you. And typically when I make sauerkraut, I use a knife, a very sharp one, but you can also use a kraut cutter, or a more modern term is a mandoline. These are available on Amazon or at your local grocery store. So I'm going to start by cutting the cabbage basically in half. And because this cabbage is so fresh and so small, it doesn't have a big core. If you're using a larger cabbage, you'll have to remove the core. But today I have no waste. To use a mandoline, I'm going to quarter it and slide it. Because I like a finer sauerkraut, I'm going to take my knife and chop this again one other way. It's important that you use a sharp knife in this process. So now I have my cabbage nicely diced up to my liking. You can do this thicker or thinner depending on your flavor preference. And it definitely does change the flavor and how it absorbs the salt. So feel free to experiment. Do one chunky and one extra fine and see which one you like. Next I'm going to add the salt. Now the rule of thumb with all fermenting is 2 tablespoons of salt per 1 quart. That's a guesstimate, especially with sauerkraut, as people for years have never measured the salt that's gone in it. A lot of people do it by taste. But what's important is that the kraut starts to break down. So I've added just about 2 tablespoons to start. I'm going to mix it together with my hands. Now the reason sauerkraut forms its own brine is because during the cutting and pounding process, the cell walls are actually rupturing, releasing the liquid, and the salt helps with that as well. So the next step is pounding, which is the fun part. You're going to pound for 2 to 5 minutes on a batch this size. Now if you're doing a larger batch, you're going to pound more. And traditionally, women would get together in groups of 10 or 15 with all of their cabbages, and they would make sauerkraut all day long together, taking turns cutting and mashing and salting. Now that the mashing is finished, I'm going to tightly pack our sauerkraut into a mason jar. And look at all that brine that it formed on its own. I haven't added any liquid to this. That's simply from the salting and mashing process. So we want to make sure it's as submerged as we can get it. And then throughout the day I'm going to check on it and continue to push it down. As it becomes more and more saturated, it'll tend to stay under the brine. So for the first 12 hours, you baby it a little bit. So the last thing we do is cover it, and I like to use plastic lids in fermenting so that there's no risk of reaction, like you would have with a metal lid that may potentially have a slice in it. And you're going to cover the sauerkraut and leave it on your counter for 2 to 5 days. It's safe to eat at any time, so just open the lid and taste test it, and as it gets more sour you can determine if you like it less sour or more sour. Between 2 and 5 days, once it's completed its fermentation and you've tasted it and you love it, it's time to stop the fermentation process by placing it in the refrigerator, where it will slowly ferment over time, but nothing like being out on the counter. Sauerkraut can last in your fridge up to 6 months, so enjoy it slowly or as quick as you can eat it. So it's 5 days later and the sauerkraut is done. Look at that color. It will change color after some time, and it should smell sweet and sour at the same time. If there's a little bit of fuzziness on the top, that's normal, and you just scrape that off. It's totally edible as long as the bottom part is unaffected by that. So if you have any other questions about making sauerkraut, leave us a comment in the section below. And if you enjoy this video and want to support what we're doing, feel free to like and subscribe.